Hi again then guys, and welcome to another circuit setup for Gran Turismo Sport in particular, and we haven't covered any Group 3 cars in quite some time, and I do get a fair amount of requests to do circuit setups for these. Some people want to use them, for instance, for GT Sport Mode events or Nations Cup stuff, or balancer performance applicable lobbies, all that kind of thing. So with that in mind, I haven't adjusted the power or the weight because it makes it more of a level playing field. It's just what the car comes with from day one, because it's more about the handling. It's about the grip. It's about the driver feedback, how easy it is to use the car, how low stress it is, for instance, over a long endurance race. You don't constantly want to be fighting against the vehicle that you're in. So with that in mind, we've got traction control turned off. Of course, you could have it on if you want to, but you will ultimately be faster without it. Again, like with the power and weight, I've got racing hard tyres because, of course, mediums and softs will be even quicker. But as I've said before, if you can build a car to be good on hard tyres, then it will be better on softs. Whereas if you build a car that's dependent on soft tyres and then are forced to use hards, it could end up being total trash because it's not the tyres that you built it for. Now, as far as the suspension goes, I've dropped the front ride height as low as it can go, which really helps with the turn in, especially with what we've done with the diff and other aspects that you'll see in a second. As far as the back, we've got 70mm, which is 5mm higher in conjunction with the front and in comparison to it. As far as the frequency, we've got that on 3 for the front and the back, anti-roll on 5 and 6. For the compression on the dampers, we've got 57, 84 on the rebound. A hefty amount of camber, but more on the front in particular, 2 degrees on the front, 1.5 on the back. Now, I will say, you can actually swap those around if you want to, and I would recommend trying both because it has a subtle difference to the steering, which some people might prefer. It actually makes it a little bit more inclined to oversteer rather than understeer, and for some people and for certain tracks, you might actually prefer that. So it's interchangeable. This setup that I've done is more about making it easier to use, whereas if you swap it to 1.5 and 2 instead of 2 and 1.5, it can actually make the turn-in a little bit sharper, but you'll need to be more careful about how much throttle you give it out of corners in particular. We've got neutral toe. Of course, feel free to use toe if you want to, but I prefer not to because you're in effect just dragging the tyres the whole time. As far as the aerodynamics, the downforce in particular, we've got that as high as possible. As I said, is a handling tune, so you'll have to adjust that as necessary if, for instance, you're on a track where you need more top-end speed, like Le Mans or the Nürburgring. As far as the diff, of course, different driving styles and different drivers will prefer different diff settings. So I've got the highest initial torque, which really what would be the term? Stiffens up the steering, I guess, makes it a lot heavier. And then as far as the sensitivity on braking and acceleration, I've got that on the opposite, as low as possible. So as I said, that will not work for everyone, but give it a try. If you like it, go with it. If you don't, then adjust it a bit. You can actually run it with 60 on all 3 as well. So again, like with the camber, I would recommend trying both, see which you prefer. And as far as finally the transmission, of course, this is very dependent on having stock power. So balancer performance can change that immediately, or if you change the power yourself, of course. But I've got the fully customized transmission, auto setting of 174, which I believe is what it comes with, if I recall correctly. Then for the individual gears, we've got 3, 2.2, 1750, 1450, 1250, and 1.1 with that final drive, of 3.9. Now that's it for the tune. Plenty of room for variation, of course, as there always is, but what you want to see is when we put it out on the track, how does it compare to the other cars that we've built, but in particular, of course, the Group 3s. Well, in terms of how it compares to those other Group 3s, one of the main issues at the moment, and of course in the coming days and weeks on the channel this will change, I haven't done that many tunes like this for Group 3 cars yet, because most of the Group 3 tunes that I did way back actually did have upgraded power, and they weren't always on this track either. So some people do ask, why do I always use Dragon Trail? The reason is very simple. It's the same reason why Top Gear uses the same track to compare their cars. That's the reason. You can't compare a car if you're putting it on 2 different tracks because the lap times won't mean anything. So when we keep it on Dragon Trail, it's a track which has a good mix of tight and open corners, tight corners and straights. It's got a bit of everything. So How does it compare? Well, it is a couple of seconds slower, for instance, than something like my 911 RSR build or my Beetle, but the reason why is because they had like 700 horsepower, whereas this is stock, which is why I said it's not an accurate comparison yet. In terms of how this compares to a normal 458, which of course is the bigger issue, it's a lot easier to control. Now, as I said, it's still a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, so you can get the tail out. Don't expect it to handle like a Nissan GTR, because it's never going to. It's just not that kind of car. However, if you've had issues with vehicles like this in the past, I know some people have issues with the Audi R8 and the Huracan as well from Lamborghini, I will be covering those as well, because mid-engine cars do tend to be the most temperamental. This does make it a lot more controlled though, far more beginner friendly, far more forgiving, and it actually makes the steering in particular heavier, especially as you go through a corner. So if you like that style, if you want the car to be easier to use, give the tune a try changing up the settings that I mentioned, and see how it compares to your own. Maybe even make a Frankenstein tune between yours and mine put together. That's the whole point of my setups. But overall, that's it for this build. Of course, click here on screen to see all of my other tunes, and stick around on the channel for more. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.